Flight cancellations over the holiday weekend due to the Omicron surge trigger global travel chaos. And the death toll from a Christmas Day suicide bombing in the Democratic Republic of Congo rises to 7. Talks to revive the 2015 Iran nuclear deal are set to resume today in Vienna. EU diplomat Enrique Mora will be chairing the negotiations. He said the JCPOA Joint Commission will meet to discuss and define the way ahead. Early on Saturday, Iran said it had no plans to enrich uranium beyond 60% if the talks fail. Ahsan Kevani tells us more from Tehran.
Both Tehran and Washington insist that the other party and the other side must take the first steps in order for the 2015 JCPOA to be revived. Therefore, the atmosphere of negotiations in Vienna is still a kind of who first. Lavrov says, although the United States has not fulfilled any of its commitments related to the JCPOA, Russia, China, and the other European parties in Vienna talks believe that both Tehran and Washington should simultaneously take the first step and go forward based on a package of mutual steps. And this is what the Vienna talks are focusing on at the moment. But even if such package of mutual steps will be agreed in Vienna, the U.S. as the violator of the agreement and a party that unilaterally withdrew from the deal is expected to offer necessary guarantees that it will not unilaterally withdraw again and disrespect the international community.
A Myanmar court has postponed verdicts in 2 cases in the trial of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The court had been due to rule on charges on Monday, but a source familiar with the proceedings said the date has been moved to January 10th. Suu Kyi is charged with illegally importing and possessing walkie-talkies. Early this month, she was sentenced to 4 years in prison for incitement against the military and breaching COVID-19 restrictions. The 76-year-old Nobel laureate has been detained since generals ousted her government on February 1st. She faces charges including corruption, election fraud, and violating the Official Secrets Act. Suu Kyi faces decades in prison if convicted on all counts. Afghanistan's ruling Taliban has issued new travel restrictions for the women in the country. The Ministry for the Promotion of Virtue and Prevention of Vice directive limits a woman's ability to travel longer distances unless accompanied by a close male relative. It advised taxi drivers to offer rides only to women wearing an Islamic hijab or a headscarf. The decree also requires drivers of the male-only transport sector in Afghanistan to grow beards, break for prayers, and refrain from playing music in their vehicles. The restrictions are part of the many laws introduced by the authorities since they regained power in August. The global community, however, has not recognized the Taliban government. For more on this, we're joined by Zmarilai Abasin, live for us in Kabul. Zmarilai, can you tell us more about this ban?
Hello, Peninah. Well, there were much more concerns in the minds of Afghan women, and now these reports on increasing to those concerns because the restrictions on the education from the intermediate to the ending the school, and it was just till 6th grade, and many provinces, just 7 provinces are open for the girls to carry on their education and end it. While on the 27 other, it's still restricted. We also witnessed some other restrictions even in media. The female anchors are told to wear the hijab according to Islamic Sharia, and that's what the anchors that I've been talking with, they say we'll appreciate it, but we want to carry on our job. There are other restrictions on the universities. Universities are still closed, which are run by the state, but the private universities are open, and the boys and girls, they just carry on their studies. Now banning the travel of women alone without accompanying any relative, it is, I said, increases those concerns. But there are 2 kind of narratives among the Taliban. It seems that the hardliners will try their best to do so. And the Ministry of Virtue and Vice, which is, it's reported that they have done so, and they have distributed some papers or told the taxi drivers to ban the women when they are alone. So I talked with Taliban central government deputy spokesperson Peninah Karibe, and here is what he told me.
Speaking on something likely is improper. We'll wait to find out what is the issue. Until now, we haven't received anything like this.
So, Zmerilai, is this decree unique to Afghanistan? I mean, are there other countries in the Muslim world that have such, restrictions on women?
Well, Peninah, before coming up to this part of your question, I will go just a little back. After getting this interview of Peninah Karibe, the deputy spokesperson of the government, I talked with taxi drivers in the city and told that most of them told me that they were told by the Taliban that they have to restrict women when they are alone without accompanying any male, and even they are told that no music anymore in the taxis and other issues that are related. Some of them told me that they were told that do not set the woman in the car in front seat, and the rest it's okay whether there is no accompany. So there are two narratives, as we said. Coming up to the second part, as you asked, that the main thing that is concerned, I at least haven't heard anything about this. The Islamic countries are obeying most of the Islamic Sharia, such as the Saudi Arabia. It was a restricted country for women, but now it's very much relief for the women. They can drive, they can walk, they can work, they can get educated from long time, and now it's easing all those restrictions. But the government formed by the Taliban in the country, the different kind of voices come. Yet we have to wait. The Taliban will apply all those restrictions on women in the future formally, or they will be able to avoid the two different narratives. The hardliners and the middle ones, they are still, it seems like, in negotiation. Peninah.
All right, we appreciate that update. Thank you very much. As Marilai Abbasin, live for us in Kabul. Leaders from all over the world are sending in their tributes to celebrate the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, whose death was announced on Sunday. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says that the nation has lost one of its finest patriots. Former United States President Barack Obama remembered the anti-apartheid hero as a mentor, a friend and a moral compass. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II also sent her condolences, stating that Tutu's loss would be felt across the Commonwealth. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres described Tutu as a towering global figure for peace and an inspiration to generations across the world. Details of the funeral and memorial services will be announced in the next few days.
We have lost a person who carried the burden of leadership with compassion, with dignity, with humility, and with such good humor. We are comforted in the knowledge that he has left an indelible mark in the lives of millions of people who had the privilege and honor of knowing him. Like many of his time, he was a witness to the gravest injustices and most intolerable cruelty that our country has ever witnessed.
At least 8 people have died in a suicide bomb explosion in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The attack took place late Saturday at a bar in the eastern city of Beni during Christmas celebrations. Officials say 20 people were also wounded in the bombing, and it was difficult to identify the bomber because of the state of the body. Authorities blamed the Allied Democratic Forces militia for the explosion. The group is claimed by the Islamic State as its Central Africa arm. It did not immediately claim responsibility for that attack. Data tracking website FlightAware says more than 7,000 flights were cancelled worldwide on the Christmas weekend amid rising cases of COVID-19. Many more flights around the world are also delayed or expected to be cancelled in the coming days as the growing number of Omicron infections has led to staff shortages. Nawid Jabakil has more from London.
Here in Europe, London's Heathrow Airport impacted, although that impact a lot less severe. Dozens of flights have been cancelled here, more than 60 the last time I checked. But this is an issue that's affecting people, particularly at a busy time of the year. The Christmas, New Year period is one when traditionally lots of people decide to travel often to see family. Why one big factor is self-isolation rules and quarantine. If one member of cabin crew has to test positive or does test positive, even if the other members of that crew do not have coronavirus, they also have to, in many parts of the world, isolate and go into quarantine. And that's what's causing staff shortages all around the sector. And it's not just the aviation sector. We're seeing lots of industries all around the world hit in terms of staff shortages. Here in the UK, for example, the surge in cases driven by the Omicron variant has led to record high infection rates, more than 120,000 recorded on Friday. That's a record by some distance. In France, they've also passed the 100,000 mark. So this is something hitting a lot of economies. But I think just in terms of the travel and tourism sector in particular, they've been hit very, very hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this probably couldn't come at worse timing for an industry that has been on its knees for the best part of almost 2 years.
Let's leave it there for now on The World Today. I'll be back shortly with more news from the continent on Africa Live. Thanks for watching.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The little tents here, bottles are being thrown. As they do so,
there are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
the front line. Within clear view of this front line position.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Libya's parliament to meet on elections timetable. Tributes continue to pour in for South Africa's anti-apartheid hero Desmond Tutu. And Somalia's president suspends the prime minister, citing allegations of corruption. This is Africa Live. Thank you for joining us. I'm Peninah Karibe. Also coming up, Kenya scraps plans to nationalize state carrier Kenya Airways. And Manchester City and Leicester play out a thrilling back-and-forth game on Boxing Day with 9 goals scored between them. Humanitarian agencies in Libya are reporting the discovery of 27 bodies of Europe-bound migrants that have washed ashore in western Libya. The bodies were found in the coastal town of Homs in 2 separate locations. 3 other migrants have been rescued as search efforts continue. The International Organization for Migration says it has recorded over 160 deaths in this month after migrants drowned in 2 separate incidents off the coast of Libya. According to the United Nations Migration Agency, about 1,500 migrants have perished in shipwrecks in the central Mediterranean route this year. At least 8 people have died in a suicide bomb explosion in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The attack took place late Saturday at a bar in the eastern city of Beni during Christmas celebrations. Officials say 20 people were also wounded in the bombing, and it was difficult to identify the bomber because of the state of the body. Authorities blamed the Allied Democratic Forces militia for the explosion. The group is claimed by the Islamic State as its Central Africa arm. It did not immediately claim responsibility for that attack. Leaders from all over the world are sending in their tributes to celebrate the late Archbishop Desmond Tutu, whose death was announced on Sunday. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says that the nation has lost one of its finest patriots. Former U.S. President Barack Obama remembered the anti-apartheid hero as a mentor, a friend, and a moral compass. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II also sent in her condolences, stating that Tutu's loss would be felt across the Commonwealth. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres described Tutu as a towering global figure for peace and an inspiration to generations across the world. Details of the funeral and memorial services will be announced in the next few days.
We have lost a person who carried the burden of leadership with compassion, with dignity, with humility, and with such good humor. We are comforted in the knowledge that he has left an indelible mark in the lives of millions of people who had the privilege and honor of knowing him. Like many of his time, he was a witness to the gravest injustices and most intolerable cruelty that our country has ever witnessed.
South Africans have also been paying their tributes to celebrate their fallen hero, as Tatal with more on that.
A unifying symbol for all African freedom fighters. This is a description of Desmond Tutu from the Norwegian Nobel Institute, a statement that South Africans agree with.
Thank you for being with us.
It's actually very sad, and I don't think not only for South Africa, but for Africa as a continent. We have lost a great icon, a father, a human who was there not just for the South African people, but for Africa as a nation, Africa as a unit, Africa as one.
Any death is a sad death, actually. I mean, like, if we're losing our leaders like this, our elders, it's always sad, it's never easy. So I'm very saddened about his death.
Stephen Gish, the author of a biography on Tutu, regards him as South Africa's Martin Luther King. Tutu also maintained a presence in the international community, taking part in mediation efforts from Kenya to as far as the island of Cyprus. His memory as a brave and authoritative leader will forever be ingrained in those who knew him.
I feel very, very, very down emotionally right now. because he was somebody that almost everybody liked, especially the kids. They love him.
We're very sad.
Very sad. It was a real shock to us. He
was a great man.
Yes, somebody to look up to. And we're really going to miss him.
In recent years, Tutu was hospitalized several times due to infections associated with cancer treatment. President Cyril Ramaphosa says his demise marks another chapter in bidding farewell to those who have handed down to the nation a liberated South Africa. Asta Tal, CGTN.
And for more on Desmond Tutu's legacy, we are joined by Gabriel Krauser, a socio-political analyst from the Institute of Race Relations. He joins us from Johannesburg. Thank you very much, Gabriel, for joining us. So, a thinker, a leader, a shepherd, these are just some of the words used to describe Archbishop Tutu. How will you remember him?
Yeah, as a great South African and someone impossible to box in. There's the story well recounted of Tutu, the South African Mahatma Gandhi, who used non-violence, trust, acts of faith, reason, compassion to confront and ultimately topple a wicked racist regime. But then who was no lackey to the ANC either. A few years ago, he said, quite shockingly, that he found aspects of the ANC's government to be worse than apartheid. He said that he would pray for the collapse of the ANC regime as he had prayed for the collapse of apartheid if things were not righted. He, I think, stood for something much more than any political party can offer. I think he stood for ideals that he would have cashed out in Christian terms, but that can be understood universally. Decency, justice, and ultimately a sense that within every human being is the capacity to triumph over the wickedness without and the wickedness within. And he was an inspiration. Beyond that, I'll just add that this might sound very heavy, and it was. But he was a man of great light, great wit, good humorist, very quick with a joke. And I think that's part of the reason some of my colleagues who had personal interactions with him, for example, feel such a sting in the tail when they consider his loss, because he wasn't just an important South African leader, he was also a pleasure to be around for those who had that privilege.
And he was also a man, Gabriel, who held a unique place in apartheid-era South Africa. What were his contributions to the fight against apartheid?
I think it is very important to look back within the Christian tradition at the fact that the parts of the Dutch Reformed Church, parts of the NG Kerk, had become on side with apartheid, and that the government of apartheid, as well as parts of the church, had co-aligned to reread that religion as a white supremacist doctrine. And there were this made it very difficult to resist, as we see in various parts of the world. Once a political regime gets that faith aspect on its side, it's very hard to reason. In fact, that's the whole point. It's impossible to overcome it through argument. And there needed to be a major pushback at that level. South Africa, our polling shows, other polling shows, South Africa is a vastly majority Christian country. And there was deep frustration with how Christianity was being interpreted in the corridors of power. And I think at an abstract level, Tutu was very important, one of the several bishops and ministers who pushed against that and took the text and the teachings of Jesus Christ as they understood it far more seriously and leveraged that against the people. A secondary factor is that, and what follows from that, is that although the ANC, the UDM, the United Democratic Movement more generally was finally triumphing its push against apartheid towards the end of the 80s and the 90s, we had the People's War, effectively a war between the ANC, the IFP, the PAC, and various other black majority parties who could now see that apartheid was going to end and were keen on monopolizing what came thereafter, perhaps. And Tutu, I think, played at times an important leadership role in curtailing some of those forces of violence and of selfishness, and saying that there's a broader mission here, which is not about you becoming powerful, it's about us becoming free. And I think that some of those interventions around points of necklacing, which was quite a horrific practice, for example, during the latter days of apartheid, were telling. And then moving into the new era, he had his most direct, I think, role in tackling apartheid as the chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, appointed by eminent South Africans to oversee the process whereby the perpetrators of apartheid, some of the most egregious perpetrators, were called to say what they did, to give those victims or families of victims in the country more broadly an opportunity to confront the facts and think about it. That was a very difficult process, and there's a lot of complaints about how it went. But I think Tutu gave it his all. I think he was very sincere in his role and his contribution there.
All right, we appreciate those insights. Thank you very much, Gabriel Krause, joining us via Zoom from Johannesburg. Libya's parliament is due to discuss a new change in the elections scheduled, as well as the mandate of the current interim government, which was meant to end last Friday when presidential polls should have taken place. But the polls were postponed over disputes about its legal basis and the candidacies of contenders. The country's electoral committee has suggested pushing the vote to January 24th. Western region politicians are trying to push for a longer delay. They want to hold a constitutional referendum first. The UK has been accused of defending corruption and interfering in internal processes by Libyan parliamentarians. Libya's first presidential elections were intended to mark a fresh start for the country after a decade of an uprising that ousted and killed Muammar Gaddafi. CGTN's Adel Mahroui joins us live from Cairo for more on this. Adel, do we have any more details on the proposed meeting of the Libyan parliament?
The meeting until early hours in the morning, the parliament did not announce any specific agenda for the talks, which means that there are still numerous issues that might be added for members of parliament and the Eastern-based parliament to discuss. Now, we know for sure that one of the main items will be discussing the schedule of the upcoming election. However, Parliament Speaker and some members of Parliament say that they may be discussing also another topic, which could be the formation, the call to form a new cabinet. And this comes after the criticism that you've just mentioned from Libyan parliamentarians and also Western politicians against the UK's statement to endorse Dbeibah to continue as the interim prime minister, accusing him of corruption. So this also might be another turning point in the talks, and also they may be discussing, and these are all big maybes that have been announced but not confirmed by the Speaker of Parliament. They may be also discussing the possibility of holding a constitutional referendum before proceeding to the election, in which the Parliament Speaker says if this happens and gets approved, for the Parliament to approve holding a referendum, this means that the elections may be pushed by even more than the earlier speculated and suggested date by the Elections Committee of 1 month to be held on January 24. So basically today's session of Parliament will definitely plan Libya's future, whether it will be holding elections in the coming months on January 24 or even after that. And what may be more controversial is the issue of discussing the government's credibility or replacing it with a new interim cabinet, which might put Libya back to a huge conflict that it has fallen in back in 2014, where the parliament did not recognize an existing and UN-endorsed government, and the government, with the politicians backing it, did not recognize the parliament.
All right, Adel, thank you for that update. Adel Mahroui live for us in Cairo. 1:30, you're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Straight ahead. Somalia's president suspends the prime minister, citing allegations of corruption. And in Nigeria, demand for woven cane baskets rises amid the holiday season. Somalia's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo has suspended the nation's Prime Minister. Mohamed Hussein Roble was relieved of his duties on Sunday as the two leaders disagreed over delayed parliamentary elections. The parliamentary vote began on November 1st and was to be concluded by the 24th of this month. However, lawmakers say that only 24 out of 275 representatives have been elected. Under Somalia's electoral process, regional councils choose a Senate. Clan elders then pick members of the lower house who install a new president. Both the president and the prime minister say they intend to hold separate meetings on the elections to determine a way forward. Sudanese Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok is expected to announce his resignation soon. Political figures have urged him to stay, but he insists he has to leave. It remains unclear what has fueled his decision. But in the past weeks, Hamdok has faced a backlash on the streets and among political groups after he made a deal with the military and was reinstated as Prime Minister last month. Protesters who previously saw Hamdok as a symbol of civilian resistance to military rule have denounced his deal as a betrayal.
استقالة حمدوك هي بمثابة
Hamdok's expected resignation is an early warning of the state of political fluidity that exists in the Sudanese political scene, from where of the intransigence of the military or the party that carried out the coup of the 25th of October on the one hand, and on the other hand, the forces rejecting Hamdok-Burhan agreement. The Prime Minister found himself alone, without a political incubator and without public support.
In my opinion, there is another reading and a small possibility that this expected resignation can be understood as a political maneuver and a political tactic by Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. Hamdok is well aware that he is the remaining link between the political forces, the coup camp and the international community, and therefore this expected resignation may grant those behind the coup the chance to fully expand in the state's joints and impede the expected civil democratic transformation.
In Nigeria, cane craft artists and entrepreneurs are cashing in on the Christmas festivities. The high demand for woven cane baskets comes with the season's gift-giving traditions. The once dying craft has now come alive as artists express creativity with the cane baskets in varying shapes and sizes. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam has more.
40-year-old Peter Robinson is popularly known as the King of Cane for his artistic dexterity in the craft. Weaving with gusto, he's doubling his efforts to finish clients' orders for these bespoke cane baskets. Robinson started cane crafts over 3 decades ago. He was barely 7 years old. Now it's peak period this Yuletide, and his craft is finally paying off. He rakes in nearly 20% in profits. He credits it to his artistic prowess.
When you do a good job, the job sells itself. There is good profit in this job, especially if your work is good, and people in Abuja likes and will patronage a neat job anytime.
Robinson has a growing customer base. Adiola Nganje is one of those who patronize him. She runs Happy Hampers, a gifts packaging business that's bolstering this Yuletide. Depending on the size and items, a hamper could cost between $45 and $250, and for exotic gifts, it costs even more.
The cane baskets are more durable, they are flexible, they are resistant to the weather, whether rain or heat, and you can use them even after giving the gift. Even after having the gift, it can still be used for household use, to store things. If you are doing like 15 to 20 hampers on an average, you can make like 15% profit on each basket. So it's a very good business. Since the beginning of the holiday season, that's since the beginning of December, I've made like 10 to 15 per week.
Cane craft is a major expression of artistry in Nigeria, passed down from generations. Chairs, tables, Stools and other attractive home furniture items are created from cane. Cane artists like Peter Robinson believe that with government support, Nigeria can make revenue from exports.
I'm hoping that we can start exporting this cane craft because the Western world needs cane. If the government supports us, there is a huge opportunity to do better on this craft.
We can do more than better than this for this our work.
All materials from cane crafts are sourced locally, and it's helping many like Peter Robinson and Adiola Nganje not only earn a living, but create job opportunities for others. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Coming up in business news. Kenya scraps plans to nationalize state carrier Kenya Airways. And Tunisair gets 5 new aircrafts with a price tag of around $261 million.
Africa is ending yet another pivotal year. From moments of uncertainty to moments of triumph, moments of unrest, moments of rapid change in business, climate change, security and diplomacy, and coming back from the break. All these and much more on Event 2021.
Africa's most industrialized economy risks having its recovery stall, partly due to the most recent wave of COVID infections. Economists surveyed by Bloomberg expect GDP growth of 4.9% this year, 20 basis points lower than earlier estimates of 5.1%. Annual GDP growth is expected to fall to 2% in 2022 and 2.1% the year after. How the pandemic evolves and domestic power constraints are key downside risks for future growth. Following the discovery and sequencing of the Omicron variant of COVID by South African scientists, over 90 countries imposed travel bans affecting the already battered tourism and travel sector. Output also contracted by 1.5% in the third quarter in the wake of deadly riots. Kenya's government has dropped plans to nationalize Kenya Airways. Instead, the Finance Ministry plans to roll out a $1.3 billion multi-year restructuring program, which includes taking over the airline's debt. The change of plan is contained in the latest Article 4 review on Kenya from the International Monetary Fund. Nationalization was expected to give Kenya Airways renewed growth momentum, but Parliament has delayed in passing the National Aviation Management Bill of 2020, which was meant to give the government legal grounds to buy out minority investors in the airline, including KLM, which owns 7.8% of the airline. Kenya's Finance Ministry now intends to take over the national carrier's debt while reducing the frequency of flights, cutting fleet size and laying off staff. To Tunisia now, where the state-owned carrier has bought 5 new aircrafts at a total cost of around $261 million. The first of the 5 planes was delivered on Thursday. 3 more will be delivered in April, July and September next year. The 5th aircraft will be delivered in April 2023.
The first aircraft was delivered on Thursday. The Minister of Transport declared that the reinforcement of Tunisair's fleet with 5 new planes will help solve the problems of delays and to respect flight schedules.
This new aircraft is the first delivered of the 5 purchased by Tunisair. These aircrafts will guarantee comfort, safety and security. Tunisair is embarking on a process to revamp its fleet among a reform plan that includes fleet renewal. This is the first step in the restructuring plan.
The national carrier is working to optimize its network. The 5 Airbus A320neo will save Tunisair's fuel and reduce CO2 emissions.
This new aircraft will save fuel by 15 to 20%. It will allow Tunisia to go further and reach new destinations. The operation distance will reach 5,700 kilometers from Tunis Carthage Airport and open new markets for the airliner. The Airbus A320neo will also reduce CO2 emissions by 20%.
The CEO of the Tunisian airline added that the company's restructuring plan has started In addition, the national carrier plans a capital increase. The company will also reduce expenditure and cancel unprofitable flights.
Tunisair is implementing the Reform and Development Program by reducing the wage bill and limiting expenses. We are also negotiating early retirement plans with syndicates and social partners. The airliner needs to be competitive because we will sign the Open Skies Agreement as soon as possible.
Tunisair plans to raise the load factor of its new planes by increasing to 78% the percentage of available seating capacity that will be filled with passengers by 2024. Tunisair aims to carry 1.8 million passengers and increase its turnover to more than $280 million in 2022. The company is continuing with plans to overhaul and modernize its fleet. This program will allow Tunisair to maintain 15 to 17 aircraft in operation. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Cutting down of trees for charcoal has increased in Somalia in recent years, leading to climate change-related shocks such as flooding and recurrent famine. But authorities say they are stepping up campaigns to end the trade to protect the declining forest cover in the country. CGTN's Mohammed Kahir filed the following report from Mogadishu.
Charcoal is the main energy for cooking in Somalia because it is cheap and accessible. Although the environmental impact of cutting down of trees for charcoal is visible, the business is booming.
We get the wounds and logs from faraway areas, hire people to bring it and cut it down for charcoal and firewood use. We don't have many challenges on the road.
The dealers say the market is nowadays shrinking after the armed group Al-Shabaab banned the trade in their territory.
We used to get charcoal from the remote areas before, but now it was completely banned. We instead purchase wood and burn it to make charcoal for sale.
Somali authorities say the export of charcoal trade has reduced in the past years following measures.
The cutting down of trees and charcoal export is illegal in our country, and we will take legal action against the perpetrators. The export of charcoal was very popular in the port of Kismayo, but the process has ceased during the past 2 years.
In 2012, the United Nations Security Council resolution placed an embargo on the export of charcoal from Somalia. According to a study by UN Convention to Combat Desertification, an estimated 8.2 million trees were cut down for charcoal in Somalia between 2011 to 2017, increasing land degradation and food insecurity. Mohammed Kahir, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
And coming up in sports news, Manchester City and Leicester play out a thrilling back-and-forth game on Boxing Day with 9 goals scored between them.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference. How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We start with football from the English Premier League with champions Manchester